You can all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks for showing up and being here. Nice to sit with you all. One of the kind of core Buddhist teachings is the teaching of impermanence. And as the Buddha said, there's birth, there's aging, there's sickness, and then there's death. Sounds pretty miserable, right? But that's what we get, right? We get birth, we get aging, we get sickness, and then we pass. And so all along the way, we want to try to find joy and happiness within the aging, the sickness, and the death. And so that's the practice, is to find joy, to find happiness. And for me, the practice of impermanence has been absolutely fundamental in my own personal journey. I think in the journey of this, just watching the space evolve and sitting with you all. But understanding that we go through different periods of our life, different phases, different stages, different places we live, different people we're around, different relationships, different jobs, different schools. Wherever you're at in your life, there's been like a million things that have changed. And part of the practice is to not get stuck in identifying ourselves as the person that was in any one of those places. Anyone in here ever done anything really mean? 3 of you, right? Right? Actually, I saw about half the room. So thank you to the other half that's never done anything mean. We all, us mean people, appreciate you. But so we've done something mean in our lives, but that doesn't mean we are a mean person. Same thing with any other emotion that we act out on, any sort of anger, any sort of sadness, any sort of good things we've done, happiness. And so throughout all of these phases and stages of our lives, we often may have a tendency to kind of identify ourselves with or as that person. And the practice of impermanence really reminds us that we're just sitting here in this moment with a trillion things over a trillion moments that have passed. Everything is always changing. And when we can begin to embrace that, we begin to understand that here I am. I've made it this far. Whatever challenges, whatever difficulties, whatever conflicts, whatever chaos you've gone through, here you are. And guess what's going to happen going forward? More conflicts, more chaos, more challenges, more difficulties. And when you're stuck in that moment where you think, I'm just never going to get through this, And it just doesn't seem like there's any light at the end of the tunnel. Right? Just understand that that moment will change. And to be able to appreciate each moment as it arises is a lot easier if you begin to see the impermanence in each moment, each emotion, each action. It's not easy. It is a practice. It's difficult. But I think in time, it'll really help. And last thing I'll say is it also creates an opportunity for you to have really just deep appreciation and gratitude for where you are in each moment, because you've gone through a ton to get there. And if you're stuck in the past, then you're really missing opportunities to see all the beauty and joy that's in each moment. So with that, we'll start with the meditation practice. For those who are joining virtually, thanks for showing up. There's a chat box on your screen somewhere. Feel free to say hello as you are. If you have any questions or thoughts, you can share them there as well. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice when you don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or doing it wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often helps slide to the front third, pushing the stomach forward, allows the back to straighten. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated, just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. Hands can be on the knees or on the lap, whatever's comfortable. If you need to move during meditation, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator, it just means your leg hurts or you have an itch. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. It should be done by about midnight. Starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet. Wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. and no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. The most important, the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize how you feel now feels quiet, calm, and still. Or a busy mind, racing mind. Whatever you're sitting with at this moment has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit, hold the hands across the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samutpata, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakening. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless where you come from, what you believe in, where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, meditation isn't going to fix that. It helps you become aware of why your life is a mess so you can actually make changes throughout your day. This is direct perception into the present moment. And as we know, the present moment is often difficult. So we learn to be with life as it arises, as opposed to trying to escape from it, which is what many of us have done for so many years. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. Simply sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter. And that's it. Just have to roam around all day long and be nice to people. That's pretty easy. I mean, looking at this group, come on. Can't be that difficult, right? Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. But that's why we call it practice. It's just the same thing every single day. Learning to be a little kinder, a little gentler to yourself and everyone else. So with that, for me, I'll pause. I always prefer just to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And for those joining virtually, again, welcome. As I said, there's a chat box on your screen. Feel free to throw any questions you have there as well. And we'll use the rest of our brief time this evening, and I'll just respond to questions and go from there.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi.
I have a unique question, a unique situation where I was trying to buy a property, and there's a squatter person living there. And I have a lot of empathy for the person because they don't have anywhere else to go. But we're in this place where we're trying to make a trip, like buy the place. So I don't know how to proceed with getting the person to leave where there's like a win-win situation. Because we need him help, but as a human being, I feel for his situation.
Yeah. So the situation, I almost said the question, but there wasn't even a question.
Right, but your opinion.
The situation, just to share for those virtually maybe didn't hear it, is that you're in the process of trying to buy a property, and the property that you're trying to buy also has a squatter. And as a human, you feel empathy for the individual, but my guess is you're not looking to take the squatter on as a roommate. You didn't say that. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
I mean, the real Buddhist thing to do would just be to have another roommate.
If I have another room.
So if you were a good Buddhist, you would know. So here's the thing. You know, I've learned this lesson throughout my life in so many different ways, and still learn it, and still fail at it, and still get better at it, and still fail at it. But the first thing I want to say is that, I mean, you already know I'm not giving you an answer. You already knew that asking the question, but I'm just going to ramble. There's two wings to this practice, and it's wisdom and compassion. And years ago, back in 2003, 2004, 2005, the Buddhist nun that I would consider my greatest Zen master, because I didn't like her at all. And we actually got into an argument. Well, frequently we got into arguments, but this one specifically was, without going into the details of the story, I wanted her in the temple to do something that she didn't want. And we got into this argument, and I accused her of, I forget who accused who first, but I accused her of having all wisdom and no compassion. And she, in her great wisdom, accused me of having all compassion and no wisdom. What I've learned from this is we don't always know what's right. And sometimes we can get stuck trying to do the most Buddhist-y thing, right? Each person has their own individual path and their karma. And I understand the empathy and the love and the compassion you can have for this individual. But you're trying to buy a house. Buy the house. You don't have to save the world in buying a house. You don't know what will happen to the individual. You have no idea. There's a great story I'm not going to tell about a farmer with the horses. I'll tell it next time, but you know the story, right? I'm really bad at Buddhist stories, but since you asked the question, I'm glad. Good or bad, you don't know, right? Maybe you buy it and the squatter's like, you know what, I'm going to stop squatting, and you don't know. Maybe you buy it and the squatter shows up and wants to move in. You don't know. So I think as a practitioner, the simple fact that you actually are here asking this question and that it actually concerns you is really beautiful. Because my guess is, you or the other half to your equation, at some point in your lives in the past would have not been concerned about this individual at all. And your approach would have been very different. As would many people's when they buy a house and there's somebody there. But you actually do care. And you're actually thinking about what's the best way to handle this? What's the best way to approach this? What's the best way to have the least amount of negative impact on this individual? Like, you're actually processing those things. You know how remarkable that is? So with that same heart and wisdom that you both are applying to this situation, I'm sure whatever you do is going to be great. Yeah. Usually when people ask about killing ants and spiders and things like that in their house, I say, well, they were there first. So, I hope that's helpful. Yeah. What else?
So I'm having a lot of hard time dealing with procrastination. I've tried different things. I've started to do meditation and stuff in the morning before I go into work and stuff. It doesn't seem to be working. My mind is always all over the place. I'm always looking at YouTube. So I'm just wondering if there's any strategies there.
Yeah. So the question for those who didn't hear it was around, you're struggling with procrastination. You're trying to do meditation in the mornings, but then you're still finding yourself on YouTube and maybe I don't think you said wasting time, but that's what what you inferred. So let me ask you this, just because I just want some clarity around what you're sharing. Are you saying you said you don't feel like it's really working, right? Now, are you talking about that the meditation is not working with regards to no longer procrastinating?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, well, meditation isn't going to help you with procrastination. Two completely different things. So it would make sense that your meditation is not helping you with procrastination at all. It's not supposed to. Right? Show of hands, how many of you here watch 2 to 3 hours of YouTube, Netflix, Hulu, whatever a day? That's it, really? I mean, I'm in that category. I got 2 hours solid every night. Yeah.
Oh, every night? Okay. You said every day.
Oh, sorry. Let me rephrase the question. In a 24-hour period, Now the other half of the hands just went up. Thank you for pointing that out, right? You thought you were out of it, right? That's that 2 hands in the back. So these are separate things. It's great that you're doing meditation in the morning, but I don't look at meditation as a practice to overcome procrastination, right? The Buddhist teachings on diligence is where you're at, or where you're not at, right? We look at the 6 paramitas. We look at the Samantabhadra Bodhisattva here, the elephant, the 6 tusks representing the 6 paramitas, which you've heard me talk about: generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom. Generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom. This path, this practice in our life requires a tremendous amount of effort. Now, we can put great effort into watching Netflix for like 5 hours. Okay? You brush your teeth today?
Yeah.
Yesterday?
Yeah.
Probably tomorrow?
Sure.
You still have hair? You brush your hair today?
But
Yeah, all these things are habits that you've created that we do every single day. Now, around procrastination, without getting into too many specifics, it really depends upon just what specifically you're procrastinating around. And it also depends upon why often, as these human creatures we roam around thinking that we always have to be doing something. Meditation is sitting and doing nothing. Sounds like lots of procrastination to me. Now, if you're stuck on wanting to do projects, wanting to do work, wanting to do whatever it is, and you just can't get them done, try thinking about how important it is. And then stop thinking about it. Shunryu Suzuki, the great Zen master who built San Francisco Zen Center, his book Crooked Cucumber, which still to this day is one of the best books I've ever read about his life and his creation of this space. They would wake up when he was a novice monk in Japan. He was 12 years old. And the board would hit at like 4 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning to wake up. And he developed this practice where as soon as he heard the board, he just got up. Because if he thought at all about anything as a 12-year-old at 4 in the morning about to get up, there was not one chance that any of those thoughts were going to be around getting up. In Zen practice, we call it beyond thinking. So maybe you just need a board in your house to hit. And then don't think. Very often meditation for a lot of people isn't meditation, it's what? I already kind of gave it away. Thinking. Here's thinking, here's meditation. They're 2 different things. Thinking will ruin us. It will also bring us tremendous joy. But if your thinking is getting in the way, and you want to figure out how to use meditation to help you with procrastination, which was the initial question, use meditation to actually train the mind to be present, not to sit and think. And then when it comes time to do something, you can then transfer that skill of learning to be with sensation of breath and going beyond this thinking element. And then you have something to do, don't think about it. Right? I mean, Nike, they got it, right? Just do it. Don't think.
just do.
Just do. Right? When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep. Great Zen practice. Don't think. So, I don't know if that's helpful at all, but you can think about that.
On the same kind of spirit of like just do, my sister and I were having this conversation today, and we're both single moms working, and like it feels like we live in a society that is just produce, go, and like she recently met with a financial advisor who like was mapping out her life, living to 100, and like she was trying to retire early, and this guy had her working until 65, and like just doom. And like, when does the, like, we both agree as like single moms, like we're waiting, everyone says, ask for help, find your village. And it's like, where do the village people come from? And like, we live in these very individual life, and our society really like pushes that. Like, we have individual homes, like we keep thinking that a women's commune would be a great idea, and we realize we're not gonna have the time or space to like create that until like we're beyond needing that, and then we're not gonna have the energy to do that. And so it feels like this just like, like to be able to see the problems on a much grander scale, but to feel like you have no, like, and you just see it continuing down this path of like go, do. How do you find peace in that?
Yeah, usually I paraphrase stories, but I'm not going to paraphrase that one. I think that was, I think you all heard it. So the first thing is, I'm with you on the Kerouac quote, the Dharma bums, work, produce, consume, you buy a bunch of stuff, you don't need it, you throw it away, you buy more the next day. And, I think the life of the Buddha, I'll kind of tie it back to what you're really addressing, but, the life of the Buddha, to me, is the model, the example of this practice, which is he went from being a prince, had all the worldly possessions, right? Never suggesting this, because this doesn't fly so well in any time or culture, but definitely not today. He was married. A lot of people don't necessarily know that, but he was married with child when he left at 29 years old. Said, peace out. I mean, he probably didn't say that, but the story is in the middle of the night, he kissed his wife and child at 29 and he left. And he left for 6 years, roamed the base of the Himalayan mountains. And 6 years later, understood the cause of suffering and then went back, right? So I don't bring this up, obviously, to encourage or suggest anybody leave anything. I always want to throw a little asterisk there, right? But understand the renunciate path isn't about being a monk or a nun. You can stay at home with family, raise children, and still look at what would it be to renounce certain things in my life? What would it be to raise a family, to raise children as a single mom, but to not feel this overwhelming stress and pressure and burden of having to do so much? Now, there's a balance here, because your kids don't want to hear, like, guess what, kids, we're like not going to buy anything anymore, and we're just going to, live off of the land. Probably not going to work so well, right? Because that's not what they're being bombarded with. But I think as a practice, you begin to look at what are small elements within your life that you can begin to renounce that will simplify things. Sure, I get it, right? The retirement, when you're 93, you'll finally have $1 million, and like, what's the point? So one has to look at, how am I living my life? What am I spending money on? What is necessity? What do I actually need versus what do I want? And this is really the core of Buddhist teachings around craving and desire. Again, a completely different situation, right? Like you said, as a single mom raising kids, you have tremendous responsibilities, and you can't just drop all of that. But other subtle little changes you could make that might make a difference. And the only one that's really going to know that is you. It's really a matter of, how do you feel when you change things? Do you have to have X, Y, and Z? Do the kids have to have X, Y, and Z? Okay, I don't give parent advice. I'm not a parent. It's the last thing I want to go to, but I'm just throwing it out there to begin to explore, what am I craving? What am I desiring from a material standpoint? Right? Again, my first master, she said, Jeff, you work so hard, make so much money to buy so many things. If you didn't have so many things, you wouldn't need so much money, you wouldn't have to work so hard. Again, single dude, no children, very different situation. But I think you can still apply that to your life, and see if some of that, almost just like fear or sadness or anger or disgust or frustration towards the way society is, see if some of that kind of goes away. Because you can very easily become super bitter and super, I don't mean you personally, collective you, we, right? We can very easily become super bitter and super angry at the way things are. And then we're just stuck. Like everything's screwed up, society sucks, and then we're just angry and miserable. And we just hate on people all day long. Again, I'm just rambling. But that could very easily happen. And then now you're just an angry, bitter person raising children. And that's not who you want to be. So, yeah. But if I find that village you're talking about, I will let you know. Yeah. Or you just have to start it. Yeah.
It's my first time here. Thank you for the welcoming presence. I don't have a specific question. I just want to hear you ramble too. I'm fairly new to the practice. I knew the practice of the Plum Village tradition. And I came to the practice because I come from a place of deep suffering, knowing and recognizing the constant suffering for others. That's why like it resonates with me whatever we said earlier that like remember time you were mean to other people and stuff like that. And that's where I'm stuck at.
That's where you're what?
That's where I am stuck at. That moment in time where I felt like I was mean to so many people. And I remember this story that I'll be my laugh. And like at some point like yes he changed, but then when the Buddha said, okay, you can go out now and like ask calls from the people, and yet even though he's changed, the people are like still stolen him and reading, and the Buddha saying that, well, just, I don't know what he said, just like let it be, like be strong. It's like I am in that point where, yeah, I am trying to change, but at the same time I am confronting people from my past, and I don't know how it comes to the suffering and cause them,
Did you say how to transform the suffering in them?
and the suffering that's within me, knowing that I caused the suffering.
Oh,
in them.
yeah, okay. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. Welcome. Glad you're here for the first time. There's a great book, and I think it's even either Thich Nhat Hanh's book or someone in the Deer Park Plum Village tradition. It's a children's book. And it's called, we use it, our Lisa, who's been leading our kids class for like 13 years, brought it in years ago. It's called An's Anger. It's ANHS. Beautiful little illustrated children's book about transforming anger. And that's really what I'm hearing two things, is that as you're going through the process of transforming anger, as the Buddha taught, we overcome anger with compassion, right? It's the second noble truth, right? The cause of our suffering. First one is dukkha, life is suffering. Doesn't mean all of life sucks, it just means you're going to struggle a lot. If you're here on a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, you figured that out by now. The second one is the cause, greed, anger, and ignorance. These are the three poisons. We overcome them with generosity, compassion, and wisdom, right? Third one is the ending of suffering, nirvana, liberation, freedom from suffering. And the fourth one is the path, eightfold path, correct views, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. I ramble through all of that just to tell you, Google it. It's all there. You're good to go, right? But you're talking about compassion initially, transforming your anger with compassion. In the book An's Anger, spoiler alert, it's like a monster and like this cactus and this really vicious thing that transforms into a beautiful flower. Now, the challenge is as you're transforming into this beautiful flower, what I'm hearing you say is that you have a lot of anger towards yourself for things you've done in the past. And that has the potential to just keep you stuck in that anger. Can you change the past? No. Is what you've done in the past good, okay, beneficial, healthy, right? What with regards to what you're talking about? Not at all, right? We've all been there. For me as a practitioner, I mean, your question, what you're sharing, has been my journey. Growing up so angry, filled with so much hatred and rage for absolutely no reason whatsoever. And then learning this path and this practice. And you know where I had to start? With myself. I had to learn, which is what I'm sensing you're exploring and kind of hitting your head against right now, is to learn to forgive yourself. I hurt so many people. I've caused so much pain and heartache and destruction. I can't change any of it. But I had to stop hating myself for everything that I had done. That doesn't excuse it. It doesn't make it right. Just because I've forgiven myself doesn't heal the person that I destroyed 20 years ago or whatever it is. But if I don't heal myself from that, I'm going to perpetuate, keep doing it, that cycle over and over and over again. Forgiving yourself for things you've done, it's not about the other people, it's about you. And it's a gift you can give yourself for everybody else you encounter going forward. Because when we reach a place in our lives where and like I said, you wouldn't be here if you weren't at this place, or wouldn't be asking this if you weren't at this place. When we reach this place where we truly want to move past that, we recognize what we've done is harmful. You recognize what you've done is harmful. Be proud of yourself for recognizing that. Kind of similar to the, Katie's question about buying the property. That's great that you're at this place. Have love and compassion for yourself. That's what was lacking at the moment you did all of the harm to begin with. Anyone ever harmed you? Has anyone ever caused you pain or suffering or anything like that? Yes, right? Right. So, and when people cause pain, when we cause pain, we don't need more pain. We need more compassion. Right? And with the story of the Buddha and the disciple, as you're going out there and just sharing compassion and kindness and changing, it doesn't mean the rest of the world's going to change either. And when they come at you with hatred, they need more love and compassion. And when they come at you with more hatred, they need more love and compassion. So forgiveness and just keep on going, man. So I hope that's helpful. What else? Yeah,
I have more questions, but I don't want to take all the time, so.
you're all good.
So in my meditation practice, in some of the guided meditations that I do, there's this concept, and they're asking you to identify, bring an image into your mind, and then think about what's conjuring that image. It's like a practice thinking about consciousness and where consciousness is, and is it in your heart, is it in your head, is it in the universe, all these things. And Kyle and I were talking about this because we were doing the same meditation, and the same thing came to mind while we were doing this, was that it was our brain, and I'm having a hard time separating or or seeing like the idea of consciousness outside of my brain and the chemical reactions that happen that bring up memories, for example. And when I'm conjuring something in my mind that is from consciousness, but also understanding neurologically that I have memories stored and, there's the stuff in my brain that's bringing things back up to the surface. So how do you think about the brain's function in bringing up feelings and emotions and things versus consciousness?
Yeah, let me just sum that up in the last 3 minutes here. So, man, there's a lot going on there. Without getting, too technical with stuff, from the Buddhist side of things, it's, again, for those who may not know or not heard this, it's called a Alaya Vijnana. This is your storehouse consciousness. And this is, again, you're looking at 2,500 years ago, coming from the Buddhist lens, in India, time of the Buddha, they all believed in, for the most part, rebirth and reincarnation. This idea of one life, done, heaven or hell, that was crazy back then. Fast forward to today, the average person is thinking, well, this is my body, this is my brain, this is my consciousness, these are my thoughts. I'm here, I'm going to die, and then I'm done, and that's it. That's what, Western people today tend to grow up with. When the Buddha was teaching, he was teaching at the time where they just believed it was a continuation. So the consciousness was just endless stream. And it was a collection of all your past karma, your actions, body, speech, mind, everything you'd ever done was stored in this Alaya Vijnana, the storehouse of consciousness. One of the best metaphors I saw years ago was someone was talking about the process of rebirth. And if you're going to talk about consciousness, right, and where it comes from, and the brain, and the body, and the mind, and the thoughts, and all that stuff, from the Buddhist lens, I suggest looking at it this side of things as well. The metaphor was somebody had a rag, right? And they said that if they had a teacup and they shattered the teacup, there was tea in it. So now the tea is on the handle, it's on their leg, it's on the floor, right? Wherever. They take the rag, they wipe it, right? They rinse it. The tea just moves. The shell broken, gone. We are just a shell, again, from the Buddhist lens of things. Right? And it's not like the Buddha created this. I mean, this is Indian cosmology, this is, Hindu teachings, Vedic teachings, etc. So we're just a shell. The challenge is you think that that's your consciousness and your body and your brain
And my memories.
and your memories. And you're trying to identify all of that as this word coming from these letters that make up this name, Katie. And you think your entire existence is Katie. And with Katie comes consciousness and the mind and the brain and the memories and all that kind of stuff. And from that absolute attachment to your sense of self, you're asking me that question? Trying to separate it all out? Right? So, I don't know how the brain works. Right? I spent years working with a Navy psychiatrist who understood the brain, right? Sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system, and meditation changing the gray matter. And I can say all kinds of fancy stuff to make it sound like I know what I'm talking about. I don't know how the brain works, right? But what I know is that with awareness of our emotions, that changes our life. Whether they came from a past life, how the memories, where they come from, right? And there's a whole sutra where the Buddha asks his disciple to go find the mind. And I save you lots of reading. He comes back, you can't find it. So we're so attached to like what you just said. Are you aware of when you get angry? Are you aware of when you get sad? Be with the anger, be with the sadness. Are you aware when you're happy? Are you aware when you're joyful? Be with those present moment experiences. And do things that cultivate the experiences and feelings that you are craving or desiring. And I mean craving and desiring in a healthy way, as the Buddha talked about healthy cravings and healthy desires. But to try to understand all of that,
Like where it's coming from.
you know, there's not that many Buddhist jokes out there, but and even of the few that are out there, I'm really bad at telling all of them, right? But there's one out there, something along the lines of like, there's somebody gets shot with an arrow, and all these people are standing around trying to describe where it came from, who shot it, was it poison, what? They're all trying to describe all these stories around this arrow. And then the Buddhist walks up and just pulls out the arrow. I'm sure that's a wonderful meditation practice. It sounds and seems and feels very therapeutic as well. And potentially really complicated. And potentially really confusing. But again, you ask that question to a Zen dude who just wants to sit down and shut up and go beyond thinking. So, yeah. Anything else? Do one more before we close.
I have to. Your question is really interesting, and I'm a sociologist. I noticed a lot of parallels recently between Buddhist cosmology and philosophy and psychology and sociological thinking. And there's just like a thing in that called ethnomethodology, and the guy who created that basically said, we don't care what's going on in the brain, all that's up, or in the head, all that's going up there is the brain, or something to that effect. And it's basically like when studying humans or society, that thinking it doesn't matter what's going on in there. It's all in the action. So just another way of thinking about that.
Yeah, I mean, people often ask me for years, all the science out there, and there's so much science out there showing you the impacts meditation has on the brain and things like that. But at the end of the day, we still have to wake up and choose to be kind or not kind to people. And yeah. Anything else before we close? Yeah.
I think maybe like a couple of weeks ago you explained this idea of like a singular conscience. Like, can you just go into more depth into that? Or a singular conscience?
Singular?
Yeah.
Sure that was me, and you expect me to remember things I said? I spent my life trying to forget things I've said and done, and now you want me to remember stuff? A singular consciousness. I don't know that was me. Yeah, I mean,
I forgot the context, but
yeah, could have been me, but I don't. In my mind, at this moment, sharing any teaching or anything around the phrase singular consciousness. I mean, didn't you see how I danced around that question of consciousness? You think I would bring up a singular consciousness thing? Yeah. If it comes back to me, I'll bring it up next time. But yeah, sorry.
no worries.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to join palms and close. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Claire's father during his time of rebirth, and to Claire and her family and friends who suffer at this time. May they all be at peace and free from suffering. right, so before you head out, our Dharma Bum host Eddie will just make a few announcements.
Hello, everyone. I'm tonight's host, Eddie. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, except for last week. Monks, gurus, masters are teachers and are not looking for students. They're simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction. And our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 5 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and then bring it back whenever you're done. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. If a few people could stay to close and latch the windows, that would be helpful. Thank you for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you all again.
Thanks, Eddie.